The Zuni Emergence, a captivating journey through time that unveils the ancient secrets of creation and the enduring legacy of a tribe. Welcome back, history enthusiasts. Today we embark on a thrilling expedition into the heart of New Mexico, where the Zuni Pueblo's emergence from the earth is more than just a myth. It's a profound testament to the human spirit's unyielding quest for understanding our origins. As we delve into the depths of Zuni legends, we'll uncover how this tight-knit community in the arid landscapes of the American Southwest has preserved a rich cultural heritage that has withstood the sands of time. But it's not just about the past. This journey is a reminder of the deep connection all humans share to the earth and the timeless human story. Join us as we unravel the mysteries of the Zuni emergence. From darkness to light, the Zuni Pueblo's journey in New Mexico. Emerging from a world of darkness into the light of day, the Zuni people's journey mirrors the universal human experience of enlightenment and growth. Their emergence from the underworld symbolizes the triumph of hope over despair and the eternal human yearning for a better world. Exploring Zuni legends, tales of creation and spirituality. Legends are the lifeblood of any culture, and the Zuni are no exception. Each tale carries with it a profound message about their creation, spirituality, and the intricate balance of nature. By understanding their legends, we gain insight into the very essence of Zuni identity. Pueblo wisdom. How the Zuni tribe connects to their ancestral roots. The Zuni people's wisdom in connecting to their ancestral roots is truly inspiring. In a world that often forgets its past, the Zuni stand as a beacon, demonstrating the importance of preserving cultural heritage for future generations. Their intimate bond with their ancestors serves as a reminder of the strength and continuity that comes from embracing one's roots. Zuni creation story. A deep dive into ancient Pueblo culture. The Zuni creation story is a profound exploration of ancient Pueblo culture. It delves into the heart of their beliefs, myths, and rituals, offering a glimpse into a world where humanity's connection to the natural world is deeply sacred. By understanding their creation story, we begin to appreciate the richness and complexity of Zuni culture. The Zuni emergence is more than just a historical event. It's a profound metaphor for the human journey towards enlightenment. The Zuni people's emergence from darkness into the light mirrors our own capacity for growth and transformation. Through their stories, we find inspiration to navigate the complexities of life and to always strive for a brighter, more hopeful future. As we conclude our journey into the heart of Zuni country, we leave with a deeper appreciation for the Zuni people, their traditions, and their profound connection to their ancestral roots. The Zuni emergence is a timeless tale reminding us of the power of storytelling and the strength that comes from embracing our cultural heritage. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening expedition. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Together, let us keep these ancient stories alive and ensure that the wisdom of the Zuni people continues to inspire future generations. Chapter 1. The First World. A place of mist and darkness before there were stars, before there was sky, before even time had anything to tick against. There was a world, but it wasn't like this one. Imagine a place where everything is soft and wet. The air is thick like soup. It's dark, not scary dark, just ... always nighttime. There's no sky to look at, no trees, no sun, no seasons, just mist, endless mist. And in that mist, deep inside the belly of the earth, lived the first people. Now don't picture them like us. These weren't fully formed humans yet. They were more like blurry outlines of people, half-shaped, kind of squishy. They didn't really have bones yet, or language, or eyebrows. They squatted in the shadows and moved slowly, blindly, like sleepy animals, just trying to figure out where their arms were. They didn't have names, or tools, or sunlight, but they did have something important: curiosity. Even in that soggy dark world, something inside them whispered, "There's more than this." A feeling stirred, like hunger, but not for food, more like hunger for a different kind of life. But how would they know? They had no idea what light was. They had never seen color. They didn't know what up meant. Still ... they waited, maybe not even knowing what they were waiting for. Now, up above, in a realm not yet touched by humans, there was a great being, Awonawilona. You can think of Awonawilona as a spirit that could turn into anything. MSD light, breath, thought, neither man nor woman, but both, and everything. A creator, but not one who ruled with thunder or fire. No, Awonawilona, created gently, patiently. They noticed that the people in the darkness were stirring, that they were ready, or almost ready, to begin climbing upward. And so, the All-Maker began shaping the world above. First, they made light, not the harsh kind, more like the first hint of dawn, soft and golden, like what comes before the sun peaks over the horizon. Then came the clouds, the sky, the waters above and below, mountains and canyons, plants and breath, all the things that make a world feel alive. But there was one catch. The people weren't ready to just jump straight into this new bright world. It would have been too much, too fast, like walking out of a cave straight into a spotlight. So instead, there were stages, layers, worlds stacked like pancakes, each one brighter and clearer than the last. A journey, not a door. And so, the first world, that misty place of damp silence beat, came the beginning. Life there was simple, but not in a relaxing way. There was no sun to mark time, no food that grew. The people moved mostly by feel. They hunched, they mumbled. They were more potential than person. Sometimes, they'd bump into each other and grunt. Sometimes, they'd sit in silence, waiting for something to change. And sometimes, they'd dream, though they didn't yet have words for dreams. Maybe they dreamed of warmth, or space, or light, things they had no memory of, but still longed for. The Zuni say the first people were covered in slime, like newborns not yet washed clean, and it makes sense. They were raw, fresh from the deep earth, still in the process of becoming. But even then, Awonawilona was watching. One day, if we can even call it a day, since there was no sun, something happened. The mist shifted, a breeze stirred, a feeling passed among the people like a shiver, move. They didn't know why, but they obeyed it. Slowly, they began to look around, to listen, to feel their way upward. It was the start of something new, the urge to rise. Now, in Zuni belief, the earth has openings, little spiritual doorways called sipipus. They connect the worlds, and in the misty underworld, somewhere in that thick darkness, a sipipu glowed ever so faintly, like the tiniest ember. One by one, the people found it. They crawled, slipped, climbed, pulled each other forward, though they had no words for help or together yet. It was instinct, that same deep force that makes seeds push toward the light even when they've never seen it. What waited in the next world? We'll get to that. But for now, just rest here with this image. A group of damp, quiet, half-formed people, reaching toward something they don't yet understand. In the soft, muddy dark, they lift themselves, not with tools or ladders, but with longing. They don't climb because they're told to. They climb because they were made to become more. That's the beginning of the Zuni story. Not a lightning bolt, not a miracle, just a slow, quiet crawl toward light. And honestly, maybe that's how all of us begin. Chapter 2. The guide appears. Awonawilona, maker of all. So now the people have stirred. Slowly, silently, they've started to climb out of that wet and misty first world. They're not quite human yet, not in the way we think of people today. They're soft, quiet, still learning how to move, how to think, how to feel. But something inside them has begun to shift. It's like the first breath before a song, or the hush before dawn. They're moving toward something, even if they don't know what it is yet. And way up above them, not above in the sky, because the sky hasn't really taken shape yet, but somewhere in the vast spirit space of everything, Awonawilona watches, and feels, and listens. Now, it's hard to describe what Awonawilona is using plain words. This isn't a god with a throne or lightning bolts. This isn't a figure in robes with a crown. Awonawilona is more like existence itself, a divine presence, a being who can take any form, cloud, breath, light, water, idea, sometimes referred to as the maker and container of all, which sounds fancy, but it really just means everything came from Awonawilona, and everything still holds a bit of that presence. You could say Awonawilona is the first thought, the beginning of beginnings. Seeing the people begin to rise, Awonawilona doesn't rush to finish the world like it's a checklist. There's no fast-forward button here. The creation of the universe, at least in the Zuni way, isn't a snap-your-fingers moment. It's more like slow cooking, low heat, careful stirring. First, Awonawilona takes shape as a shimmering mist, like breath in cold air, then as water, then as cloud, then, finally, as the sun. Not the hot, glaring sun we complain about on a summer day. This sun is sacred. a life-giving presence, a light that doesn't burn, but blesses. With that warmth rising, the world starts to form that all at once, but in gentle layers. Above the dark underworld, Awonawilona begins shaping the middle worlds. Think of them like levels in a tall cave system, or floors in a slow elevator. Each one is slightly brighter, slightly drier, slightly more organized than the last. There's still no solid ground yet, but there is space, there is air. There's the sound of the first wind brushing against nothing. It hums like a whisper, a promise. Then come the clouds, thick and heavy with rain that hasn't fallen yet. Then come the waters, calm and wide, waiting to cradle the earth that will someday rise up through them. From these elements, light, water, air, Mr. Awonawilona births the directions: north, south, east, west, the above, and the below. Each direction has a role, a feeling, a personality. They're not just compass points, they're guardians, teachers. They help shape balance in the world that's coming. And finally, life begins to grow, not all at once. Just a little green here, a curl of plant there, a breath of breeze that smells like something alive. And it's all unfolding slowly, like a flower that opens over days, not seconds. But Awonawilona isn't done. The next step is to create guides, helpers, who can connect the spirit world and the human world. The Zuni people believe that creation didn't just happen from far away. It came close. It walked with them, taught them, spoke to them, sometimes in dreams, sometimes through wind, sometimes through animals. And so, two beings appear, twins. You'll meet them more closely soon. But here's a soft introduction. They are known by many names, often just as the warrior twins, sons of the sun, father, and the earth mother. They are sacred children, half spirit, half human, born to help the people climb and understand. Kind of like cosmic older siblings with a serious sense of responsibility. The twins carry sacred weapons not for war, but for clearing the path, for protection, for teaching. They will go ahead of the people and defeat chaos, set boundaries, teach songs, and open the way into the world of light. But they're still young, still becoming themselves. Down below, the people are rising. They've moved out of the first misty underworld and into the next layer, still shadowy but with more room to breathe. Their bodies begin to change. They're no longer slimy. They begin to form limbs, joints, fingers, still hunched, still confused, but less lost. They've begun to stretch. The spirit guides, the twins, the all-maker, none of them, force the people upward. That's not how this story works. There's no punishment, no command, just a quiet pull, a calling, and the people respond with movement. They crawl, stumble, help each other. It's not graceful, but it's honest. They move because something inside them says, keep going. And as they climb, the worlds keep unfolding. Each level of the cosmos is not just physical, it's spiritual. The air feels different, the colors deepen, time starts to mean something. The people begin to murmur, to hum, maybe not full speech yet, but rhythm. They begin to feel the difference between silence and song. Awonawilona sends gentle signs, a feather floating through a beam of new light, a whisper of warmth against a face, a flicker of orange that might be a sunrise, if they could remember what a sunrise was. And in these signs, the people find courage. What's beautiful about this part of the story is how soft it is. There's no violence, no big battle between light and dark, just evolution, awakening, like slowly stretching out of a long sleep and opening your eyes to a world that was waiting all along. The Zuni story tells us that becoming human wasn't about power or dominion. It was about balance, about learning to live in harmony with the worlds above and below, with the animals, with the water, with each other. And that's what Awonawilona was shaping, not just a planet, but a way of being. As the chapter ends, the people are not yet in the world we know, but they've taken the first few steps. The mist is thinning, the silence is turning into music, and far above them, the sun waits not to blind them, but to welcome them. Awonawilona watches all this with deep care, not proud like a builder finishing a tower, but quiet like a gardener, smiling as a seed finally sprouts. The journey has just begun, and the light is coming. Chapter 3. The Twin Children of the Sun. The people are moving up, slow but steady, through the soft layers of the world. Their eyes are adjusting to something brighter. Their bodies are changing, little by little, less like shadows, more like people. But they're still unsure, still half asleep in a way. That's okay. Becoming fully human isn't something that happens in one step. It happens in layers, just like the earth they're climbing through. And while they climb, up above, two new beings stir into the story, the warrior twins. Now, if this were a big-budget movie, this is where the music would swell, and the camera would pan dramatically over a canyon at sunrise. But this isn't that kind of story. This is slower, softer. The twins don't crash into the scene with lightning and fire. They're born gently, like most sacred things are, from union, from balance, from love. One of their parents is the Sun Father, the radiant one, the light that reaches down even into the dark. The other is the Earth Mother, the steady one, the nourisher, the one who holds all life in her soil and stones. Together, they create the twins, born not in a palace, not in the sky, but in a quiet, sacred place, maybe near water, maybe near a mountain. The Zuni don't tell it like a fairy tale. It's deeper than that. It's a truth that breathes. The twins are special not just because of who their parents are, but because of what they're meant to do. They are not warriors in the way we often think of warriors, not marching, not conquering. Their battles are more spiritual, more symbolic. They're meant to clear the path, to help guide the people upward, to defeat the dangerous beings that linger between worlds, and to teach harmony wherever they go. But even they don't start out knowing everything. Nope, like everyone else in this story, they grow, they learn, they journey. At first, they're just children, curious, restless. They ask big questions. Why are we here? Where do we come from? Why is the sun warm? Why do people look sad when they rise from the underworld? The Sun Father answers some of their questions. The Earth Mother answers others. But many lessons they'll have to figure out themselves by walking the path. And so they do. The warrior twins begin to travel. They head out across the forming earth, its mountains, still raw, its rivers still learning how to flow. The winds greet them. The animals notice them. The stars start to gather stories about them. And the twins, they listen, they don't rush. They observe. They notice the people still struggling to climb. Some of them are frightened. Some are stubborn. Some are curious but don't know what to do with that feeling. The twins understand this. After all, they're in between two, not fully spirit, not fully human. But they carry wisdom inside them like seeds, and slowly, they begin to share it. One day, they meet a group of early people who have just entered the third world, slightly brighter than the last. These people are tired, their eyes sting, their feet are sore. They've never felt wind like this. And the twins don't lecture them. They don't command. They sit down beside them. They teach the people how to breathe in the new air, how to listen for direction, how to recognize signs like the flight of a bird, or the way a shadow bends, or how the earth feels beneath your hand. They tell them that this journey upward isn't just about movement, it's about transformation. You don't just climb, you become. The people listen, some of them for the first time. But not everyone wants the people to rise. There are creatures, call them chaos beings, who live in the cracks between the worlds. They thrive in confusion. They love fear. They whisper doubt into the ears of travelers. You don't belong in the light, they say. Go back to the dark. Stay small. Stay hidden. The twins face these beings not with violence, but with clarity. They shine. They sing. They speak truths that scatter shadows. Sometimes, yes, they use sacred weapons, lightning arrows, thunderclubs, but even those are more symbolic than physical. They don't destroy for fun. They protect. They open the way. They clear the clutter. And every time they defeat a chaos being, a new path appears, a new staircase, a new breeze. The people feel it, even if they don't see it directly. They rise with more confidence, more trust. The twins don't take credit. They simply move on to the next place, quietly, like wind through canyon walls. They also teach practical things. How to recognize good water, how to greet the 6 sacred directions, how to listen to the earth and know when it's time to rest, or plant, or dance. They introduce songs not just for music's sake, but to help remember. Songs become maps in sound. You sing, and you know where you came from. You sing, and you remember what matters. The people begin to hum as they walk, and slowly, that humming turns into language, real words, not just grunts or groans, but shaped meaning. Words like sun, step, mother, river, words that feel like tools, words that start to build a culture. The twins are proud, but not boastful. They just nod and say, keep going. They leave behind small gifts, a bundle of feathers, a flint stone, a trail of white cornmeal, not treasure, just reminders that the people are not alone. One night, the twins camp high on a rocky cliff and look up. The sky is beginning to change. The stars are peeking out slowly, shyly. Some of them will become guides, others will become stories. Still others will wait until the people are ready to understand them. The twins feel the presence of their father, the sun, and their mother, the earth, all around them, in the wind, in the rock, in the silence. They don't say much. They just rest, watch, wait, because they know the people are not far behind. By the end of this chapter, the people are beginning to look more like us. Their backs are straighter, their eyes are open. They have voices now. They walk upright, not perfectly but with purpose. They follow trails lit by starlight and hope. The warrior twins have done what they were meant to do, light the path, but there is still more to learn, more worlds to climb, and the light above is still waiting, patient, warm, ready. Chapter 4. Climbing through the worlds. Imagine climbing a staircase in the dark. You don't know how many steps are ahead. You don't even know if you're climbing the right way. But something inside you deep in your chest says go. That's what the Zuni ancestors felt as they moved through the early layers of the world. You see, the Zuni story tells us that our world, the one we live in now, isn't the only one. Before we got here, there were other worlds stacked beneath us, like layers of a giant cake baked by the universe. Each world is a little brighter, a little clearer, and a little more complete than the one below. But no one just wakes up in the top layer. You have to climb, you have to grow, and that's what the people did. They started deep in the dark, in the wet, misty underworld. At first, they could barely walk. They didn't speak. They didn't know how to be, but they felt things. They followed warmth. They moved toward sound. They listened for anything that felt like guidance. And slowly, layer by layer, they began to emerge. Each world had its own feeling. The first world, as we've said, was thick and damp. The people were half-formed like babies in a dream. They shuffled and crawled and waited, but then, a passage opened. A Saipapua sacred hole, a doorway between realms. The people found it not with maps or plans, but by instinct. Like a plant leaning toward light it has never seen. They moved into the second world. It was still dark, but not as heavy. The air was cooler. There was space to stretch, to speak, to begin shaping limbs. Their eyes started to adjust. Their hands could hold things. Their minds could wander. The mist still clung to them, but it no longer felt like a cage. It felt like fog before morning. As they rose, they weren't climbing ladders or stairs, at least not the way we think of them. The Zuni say the people moved upward through a mix of natural and spiritual paths, some carved by water, some dug by sacred animals, some opened by the warrior twins. The journey wasn't fast, it wasn't easy. Sometimes they waited for days, maybe years, just to find the next Sipapu, but they kept moving. In the third world, the air thinned. There was dim light, like twilight before dawn. Shadows had shape now. The people could see one another more clearly. They could speak in small bursts. They sang soft songs. They discovered fire not to conquer, but to gather around. They started using their hands to shape things, tools, shelters, even simple carvings that felt like memory. And it was here, in this third world, that something really changed. The people began to remember, not facts, but feelings. They began to sense that they came from something greater, that there were spirits walking with them, helping them, guiding them from unseen corners. The warrior twins were close by now, moving ahead of the people, clearing out the dangers that hid between worlds. They deface chaos beings, monsters of confusion and fear, and clear the path so the people wouldn't have to fight alone. Sometimes the people would wake up and find strange footprints near their camps, or feathers arranged in patterns, or stones stacked neatly near a Sipapu. The twins were never flashy, but their presence was steady, like older siblings who didn't want praise, just progress. In the fourth world, the people emerged into light. Not full sunlight yet, but a gentle glow, like dawn breaking behind mountains. For the first time, they could see the sky. It stretched above them like a bowl, painted with soft color. Birds flew across it, clouds drifted lazily, and the people, they wept. Not because they were scared, but because they'd never known there could be so much space. They began to walk taller. Their feet felt the difference between sand and stone. Their hands learned to plant. Their breath felt stronger, and they started noticing patterns in the stars. Each new world taught them something. In the first world, they learned patience. In the second world, they learned touch. In the third world, they learned memory. In the fourth world, they learned vision. But they weren't done yet. Not until they reached the fifth world, the one we live in now, the world of daylight. The journey from the fourth to the fifth world wasn't like the rest. It was more difficult. The cyberpew was narrow, and some say it was almost missed. At first, only a few found it. They emerged into a world so bright, it stung their eyes. They crawled out, squinting, blinking, clutching their faces. They were used to shadows. The sunlight was overwhelming. But after a while, their bodies adjusted. Their minds caught up. They began to see colors they never imagined. Green leaves, red clay, blue sky. They called out behind them, and others followed. One by one, the people of the Zuni climbed into the fifth world. Now, let's pause here. You might think that's the end of the story, that the people arrived, stood up straight, and built villages. But the Zuni know better. Emergence doesn't end with arrival, it continues. Even now, every new idea, every lesson, every story passed down to a child. That's a kind of emergence. Every time we move through fear, every time we grow, every time we walk a little closer to balance, that's another symbolic, another layer climbed. The Zuni story isn't just about coming into the daylight. It's about how you come into it with humility, with gratitude, with help from those who walked ahead of you. And yes, with corn in your hand and song in your breath. We'll talk about that soon. By the end of their long climb, the people weren't the same beings who once shuffled in the dark. They had learned how to speak, how to plant, how to walk upright, not just physically, but spiritually. They had become fully human, not by domination or conquest, but by listening, watching, waiting, and rising with care. That's the Zuni way. It's not a quick climb. It's not a heroic sprint. It's a slow, steady emergence, one foot after another, guided by spirit, shadow, light, and song. Chapter 5. The Plant People and the Rise of Corn. Now, the people have emerged into the fifth world, the world of light, the one we live in today. The first breeze in this world feels different, drier, warmer, like a soft hand brushing your cheek. There's no more mist, no more groping in the dark. The sky stretches wide, and the people can finally see it in full. Blue above, earth below, space to walk, space to become. But emerging into the daylight world doesn't mean the work is done. In fact, it's just the beginning of a new kind of learning how to live in this place, how to feed yourself, how to speak to the land. Remember, these people have journeyed far, but they're still new to this brightness. They may have climbed through the underworld, but they've never grown a plant or watched a seed turn into something green. That's where the plant people come in. Now don't picture talking vegetables with big eyes and voices like cartoon characters. The plant people are more subtle than that. They're spirit beings, sacred and quiet. They're not here to entertain, they're here to teach. When the people step out onto the dry land of the fifth world, they're amazed but also confused. There's sun, yes, and sky, and wind, but no food, no rivers nearby. Just wide stretches of land and unfamiliar plants waving in the breeze like they're whispering secrets. The people sit in circles. They look around. They listen to the land, but they don't yet understand its language. They've come so far, and now they feel ... hungry. And that's when the plant people appear. They come not with thunder, not with speeches, but with seeds. The plant beings show themselves slowly, sometimes through dreams, sometimes in the quiet of dawn, sometimes just by letting a certain plant grow near a campfire where it wasn't before. And from among all the plants, one steps forward as the heart of them all. Corn, not the corn we know from modern farms. No butter, no rows of it on stalks as tall as fences. This corn is small, tender, almost shy, like it's waiting to see if the people are ready to take care of it properly. The Zuni say corn is sacred. More than food, it's memory, it's spirit. It's the gift that helped humans become human, not just in body, but in soul. The corn maiden, yes, there is a sacred spirit behind the corn, approaches the people, maybe not walking, but showing herself in soft ways, in rustling leaves, in the way a corn husk peels open like a flower, in the way a kernel holds life inside something so tiny. She doesn't scold the people for not knowing. She shows them how to plant, how to wait, how to water, how to sing to the seed. Because planting corn isn't just about digging a hole and hoping something grows. It's a relationship. You give care, and the corn gives nourishment. You give prayer, and the corn gives strength. It's not a transaction, it's a bond. The people listen, they try, they plant. Their hands are clumsy at first. Some seeds go too deep, some too shallow. But corn is patient. It wants to grow, and it wants to help. Soon, green shoots rise from the earth. The people gather around, watching. They sing in low voices songs taught to them by the plant people. Songs that sound like wind through grass and water dripping on stone. When the first ears of corn appear, the people don't eat them right away. First, they give thanks. They hold the ears gently. They whisper words of gratitude. They make offerings of pollen and song. Because now, they understand. They are not alone in this world. The plants are not decorations. They are teachers. And corn is the first friend. The people begin to change again. Their backs straighten more. Their speech becomes clearer. They start naming things, not just each other, but the plants, the stones, the rivers. Naming is powerful. It means you recognize the spirit in something. It means you're paying attention. And corn sweet, golden, sacred cornbeak comes part of every moment. They eat it, they grind it, they cook it into soft cakes and stews. They offer it in prayers. They carry it in bundles when they walk. They sprinkle it on the ground before big decisions. Corn is not a crop, it's a companion. Other plant people begin to appear to beans, squash, tobacco, cottonwool, sacred in their own ways. They each bring something different. Beans offer strength, squash offers sweetness, tobacco brings communication with spirits, cotton brings warmth. Together, they form a family. But corn remains the eldest sister, the heart, the one who speaks most clearly to the people's stomach and soul. In Zuni culture, white cornmeal becomes a symbol of purity and connection. It's used in blessings, in ceremonies, in marriages, in healing. You sprinkle it in lines to show a path. You offer it at sacred springs to say thank you. It's like a language made of food. And all of this planting, this learning, this bonding with corn marks another major step in the people's emergence. Because think about it, in the underworlds, they could barely see, they could barely move. Now, they are shaping the land, living with rhythm, making decisions based on wind, sky, and soil. They are becoming not just survivors, but caretakers. That's a big part of the Zuni view of humanity. We're not here to control the earth. We're here to listen to it, to work with it, to share breath with it. And corn was the first being to show us how. By the end of this chapter, the people are building small homes, not cities, not palaces, just spaces where families can rest. They arrange stones in circles. They share meals. They laugh. They cry. They teach their children how to plant, how to speak, how to sing when the rain comes. Corn hangs in bunches from their doorways, drying in the sun. Its golden kernels catch the light, like tiny suns, glowing with the memory of all those misty worlds left behind. The people are no longer emerging. They've arrived. But there's still more to learn. About directions, about sacred places, about spirits that dance between worlds. So take a deep breath. Let the scent of fresh corn and warm earth fill your lungs. And when you're ready, we'll walk a little farther. Chapter 6. The final ascent into the daylight world. So here we are. The people have moved through 4 shadowy worlds, one breath at a time, and finally stepped into the 5th, the daylight world. And oh, what a feeling it must have been. Imagine spending your whole life in the fog, in damp caves and dim light, and then boom, you step into air that's dry, sky that's blue, and ground that doesn't squish under your feet. It must have felt like being born all over again. But here's something the Zuni elders would gently remind us. Emergence docenti, stop at the surface. Coming into the light isn't just a physical act, it's spiritual, mental, emotional. And just like the people had to crawl and climb through those earlier worlds, they now have to learn how to actually live in this one. That's what this chapter is about, learning to belong to the land of light. At first, the 5th world feels like too much. The sun is bright, so bright that it makes their eyes water. The air is dry. The land is open, stretching for miles in every direction, with no ceiling above them, no familiar mist to wrap around their shoulders. The people stumble, shielding their faces, whispering, "Is this really it?" Yes, this is it. But that doesn't mean it's easy. The people set up camp, unsure how to even rest without the hum of the underworld around them. Some are thrilled, others are anxious, and some just sit, stunned, staring at the sky. One child squints up at the sun and says, It's like the world has eyes now. That's actually not far off. Because in this world, everything watches. The winds, the trees, the animals, even the rocks. Everything here has spirit. And now that the people have fully emerged, they're expected to listen. This is where the teachings get deeper. The warrior twins are still nearby, always visible, but always watching. They appear in dreams, in shadows, in sudden winds that cool a heated argument or blow open a doorway just before someone walks through it. Their job isn't to fight anymore. It's to remind, to teach, to guide. They whisper truths like, the world is not yours, it's shared. Every step you take leaves a story in the soil. If you forget the corn will forget you. No pressure, right? But the people are ready now. They've climbed through darkness. They've earned their feet, their voices, their memories. They are not lost wanderers anymore. They are keepers of balance. One of the first lessons they learn in this final ascent is about the directions. In the fifth world, the 6 sacred directions take on full meaning, not just north and south like on a map, but real living forces. Each direction has a color, a feeling, a presence. North, cold, white, breath of clarity. South, warm, red, source of growth. East, yellow, the place of beginnings and sunrise. West, blue, the home of endings and reflection. Above, the sky, stars, father sun. Below, the earth, roots, mother's embrace. Every ceremony, every prayer, every important act begins by greeting these directions. It's how you say, I know where I am. I know I am not alone. So the people learn to stand still before they move, to turn their bodies slowly, acknowledging each direction, not with fear, but with respect. Even just sitting down to eat a meal becomes a little ceremony, a way to remember that they're part of something bigger than themselves. Then there's the land itself. It's not empty, even if it seems that way at first. It's full of places, springs, caves, cliffs and canyons that hold memory and spirit. Some of these places become sacred sites, destinations for prayer and pilgrimage. The people begin to map the land, not with ink and paper, but with footsteps and songs. They create trails marked with stones and white cornmeal. Songs are passed down that help you walk from one spring to another without getting lost. Certain mountains are never climbed not because they're too high, but because they're listening. And when someone builds a home, they don't just plop it anywhere. They ask the land. They wait for signs, a bird circling, a dream, a sudden breeze. They believe that the earth, if respected, will answer. And speaking of homes, these early homes aren't made of wood and nails. They're made of mud and patience. Adobe, earth, stone. The people mold their houses from the land itself. The walls are thick, cool in summer, warm in winter. The roofs are flat, the windows small. Each home has a hearth of fire at the center. And around that fire, stories are told. Prayers are whispered. Corn is ground. Children fall asleep to tales of mists, climbs, and corn maidens. Everything is done with rhythm now, with awareness. Even eating is part of the ceremony. You don't waste food. You thank it before it's even cooked. And every grain of corn is treated like a gift, not a product. By now, the people have elders, children, memory, laughter. They make pottery, soft, curved bowls painted with patterns of clouds and lightning. They weave cotton. They carve little figurines from stone, not as toys, but as reminders of spirits that walk beside them. And once a year, or more, they gather for dances. These are not dances to impress. These are prayers in motion. The people dress in feathers and paint. Their steps mimic rain, wind, crops growing. The drumbeat is the heartbeat of the earth itself. And as they dance, the earth watches and smiles. But one of the biggest shifts in the fifth world is this. The people now know that their job isn't just to live, but to remember. They begin passing down stories, not just of what happened, but why it matters. Grandparents teach their grandchildren about the long climb, about the Sisyphus, about the mist and the light, not to scare them, but to anchor them. Because even in this bright, open world, it's easy to forget where you came from. So they make it part of daily life, sprinkling cornmeal before a journey, saying thanks to each direction before a ceremony, holding silence at sunset to listen to the land breathe. It's all part of staying awake in the daylight world. And maybe that's the deepest truth here. The people didn't just arrive at the fifth world. They were invited. And that invitation came with a responsibility to live with balance, to keep listening, to carry the wisdom of the underworlds into the world of light, not like baggage, but like roots. Roots that hold you steady, roots that let you grow. And that's where we'll pause, just for now. The people are here, fully arrived, fully awake, living in a world where the sun warms their backs, the corn feeds their bellies, and the old stories still ride on the wind. But new questions are forming. What about the spirits? What about the stars? What about the beings that live in mountains and clouds? We'll get there. But for now, close your eyes, breathe softly. Let the daylight warm your face. You've climbed far, and the path still gently continues. Chapter 7. Kushina's messengers between worlds. Now that the people have found their place in the fifth world, they've got homes, hearths, corn, and calm. The sky doesn't feel so overwhelming anymore. The land feels like a friend. But the Zuni say that just because you emerged into the daylight docent mean you redone learning. Oh no, there are still deeper mysteries, still unseen beings whispering through the wind and dancing in the rain. And some of the most important, well, they come wearing masks, dancing on dust, and carrying stories between heaven and earth. They're called the Kushinas, or, in the Zuni language, Kayaklo spirits, helpers, messengers. Don't let the carved dolls and ceremonial masks fool you. These aren't just colorful costumes or characters in a festival. The Kushinas are sacred. They're bridges between the spirit world and the human world, and they walk among us, especially when we remember to invite them properly. So what exactly are Kushinas? Well, the simplest way to say it is, they're spirit beings, but they're more than that. They're guides, they're guardians, they're reminders. Some bring rain, others bring crops. Some teach songs, some keep order, some come to bless children, others come to test adults. They live in the sacred mountains like Zuni's Salt Lake or Corn Mountain, but they visit the people when called. They're not gods in the way people might think. They're not up in the clouds handing down commands. They're more like uncles, aunties, cousins, clowns, dancers, dreamwalkers, and watchers. Each one has its own name, its own mask, its own role. Some are funny, some are serious, some speak in riddles, some don't speak at all, but they all remind the people, you are not alone in this world. The Kushinas show up in ceremonial dance, special times of the year when the people gather, prepare, and open the door between worlds, and I mean really open it, like spiritually crack the sky and let the spirits through kind of open. The dances happen in plazas, out in the open, under that same sun that welcomed the people long ago. The dancers wear intricate costumes, masks carved from cottonwood, painted with ancient symbols, feathers that flicker in the wind, body paint that represents rain, clouds, lightning, and corn. And when they move slow, rhythmic, circling steps, it's not just art, it's a prayer in motion. The dust they kick up, that's not just dirt, it's memory, it's connection, it's a way of stirring up the spirit of the land. Children watch wide-eyed. Elders close their eyes and hum the songs from long ago. The drumming echoes off the adobe walls like a heartbeat shared between people and sky. And the Kushinas, they are there, fully present, dressed as men. Yes, but for that sacred moment, they are not men, they are the spirits themselves. Now, some Kushinas bring blessings, like the rain Kushinas, who dance when the clouds gather, asking them to let go of their water. Because in the desert, rain isn't just nice, it's life. When a rain Kushina appears, people fall silent. You can almost feel the moisture in the air shift. Others bring discipline, like the Kushinas who carry whips made of yucca leaves, not to hurt, but to remind people of balance, of respect, of humility. You don't laugh at these spirits, you listen. Then there are the clown Kushinas, yes, clowns, but not the circus kind. These ones wear striped black and white body paint. They act silly, backwards, out of order. They make the people laugh, but their humor always carries a lesson. They show what not to do, so you remember what is sacred. They're kind of like spiritual mirrors, hilarious, but also serious. And then, there are the Kushina dolls, those small, carved figures, often given to children. Now, people unfamiliar with the culture might think, oh, toys. But no, these aren't toys. They're teaching tools. Each doll is carved to represent a real Kushina. They're not played with. They're respected. They hang on walls. They sit in homes. They remind children. The spirits are always with you, watching, guiding. A child might look up at their doll and remember how to be kind, how to be strong, how to be brave. It's like having a piece of the sacred right there in your room. One of the most beautiful things about the Kushinas is that they show the relationship between the people and the spirit world is ongoing. It didn't stop after the fifth world. It didn't end at the top of the climb. The people may have emerged, but the conversation continues. The Kushinas keep that connection alive. They bring seasonal wisdom. They help the people mark the cycles of life, planting, harvest, solstice, equinox, birth, death. They dance for rain, for balance, for remembrance. Their presence says, keep walking the path, keep listening, don't forget. And the people answered not just by watching the dances, but by living with care, by greeting the sunrise with soft words, by offering cornmeal to the earth, by keeping stories alive through generations. Sometimes the Kushinas appear in dreams. A young man might wake up having seen a spirit with turquoise feathers and cloud-shaped eyes. An old woman might hear a Kushina's voice in the hush of dawn, reminding her how to prepare a bundle for ceremony. These moments aren't written down, they're felt, shared quietly, carried like precious seeds. You never boast about seeing a Kushina. You hold it gently, like a breath you don't want to lose. What's important is that the Kushinas are not faraway gods. They are near, close. They walk with the people, not above them. That's part of what makes the Zuni way so calming, so grounding. You're not begging for favor from some unreachable sky deity. You're dancing with spirits who live in your mountains, your waters, your dreams. They don't demand worship. They ask for attention, for respect, for a balanced life. And if you live with care, they keep coming back. Year after year, dance after dance, rain after rain. So as this chapter ends, picture the people gathered in a plaza. The drums are soft now. The sun is just dipping below the canyon rim. The dancers have finished. Feathers sway, dust settles, and somewhere nearby, maybe behind a cottonwood tree, a Kushina stands quietly watching, not judging, just present. The people go home slowly, tired in that good way, carrying stories in their hearts and cornmeal on their fingertips. They'll sleep well tonight, not because the world is perfect, but because they remembered the connection. They felt it, danced with it, and tomorrow, the sun will rise again. And maybe, if the people keep listening, the Kushinas will return. Chapter 8. Sacred Places and Pilgrimage Paths. By now, the people have settled into the fifth world. They plant corn, greet the directions, and listen for Kushinas in dreams and dances. But there's something else that keeps their hearts and feet moving: the land itself. Not just as a place to live, but as a living, breathing presence. A storyteller, a teacher, a memory keeper. To the Zuni, the land is sacred. Every bend in the river, every shadow under a rock, every mountain peak glowing at sunrise. These are not just places, they are people in their own way, spirits, ancestors, listeners. And to truly belong here, the people must learn to move through this land, not like owners but like guests who walk with gratitude. So, what do? They walk. The Zuni practice pilgrimage not as a tourist adventure, but as a sacred journey, a way to connect with the earth, with spirits, and with memory. These aren't quick walks. These are long, careful, meaningful paths, sometimes lasting days, sometimes weeks, always with purpose, always with prayer. One of the most important sacred sites is Zuni Salt Lake, or Mak Yam, or the Salt Mother. This lake isn't just a place to scoop up white crystals. It's a being, a powerful one. The Zuni say she gave salt to the people as a gift, and every time they return, it's like visiting a grandmother. You don't just take, you give thanks. You offer cornmeal, you sing, you sit by her shores in silence and listen for her breath in the wind. And the journey there, that's just as important as the lake itself. The pilgrimage paths are invisible maps, passed down for generations, not by compass, but by stars, landmarks, and stories. Elders teach the young ones, when you see the rock shaped like a bird, that's where you rest. When the cactus leans to the left, you're almost there. These paths aren't just practical routes. They're like ribbons of memory stretching across the land. And each stop along the way is a chance to remember. A spring where the people once prayed for rain. A cave where the corn maiden first whispered her blessing. A cliff where a Kushina was last seen dancing with clouds. Walking these paths is like reading a sacred book, but with your feet. Pilgrimage isn't always easy. The sun is hot. The terrain can be rough. Sometimes you walk in silence for hours, just the crunch of your sandals and the soft rattle of your prayer bundle swinging at your side. But something beautiful happens out there. The world gets quiet, and the spirit gets loud. You start to hear things differently. The wind becomes a language. The buzz of insects becomes a drumbeat. Your own breath becomes a prayer. And before long, you realize you're not walking alone. Zuni people often walk these paths in groups, families, neighbors, ceremonial societies. They don't walk fast. They walk together, stopping when someone's tired, sharing water, helping elders up rocky hills. It's not about getting there first. It's about getting there with each other. At night, they camp near old stones and whisper stories by the fire. They point out constellations, some shaped like bows, others like birds, some like trails in the sky. They pass around bundles of cornmeal and offer it to the stars. One elder might chuckle and say, "You think this trail is hard? Try climbing through 4 worlds in the dark." And everyone laughs, because that's the kind of joke only Zuni ancestors can pull off. Sometimes, the land gives signs along the way. A sudden gust of wind that changes direction. An eagle that circles above, then disappears. A tiny bloom of white flowers on a rock that should be dry. The people notice. Not everything means something, but some things do. And when they do, the walkers pause, kneel, offer thanks. Because, in the Zuni view, the land speaks not with words, but with moments, with presence, with mystery. And pilgrimage teaches the people how to listen. These sacred places aren't just for ceremonies. They're for healing too. Some paths are walked when someone is sick, not because the land cures like medicine, but because it reminds of strength, of balance, of belonging. Sometimes a person walks alone, carrying a pouch of sacred things, cornmeal, turquoise, a feather. They walk in silence, stopping to touch the earth, to cry, to pray. And when they return, they're not the same. Not cured, maybe, but clearer, held, seen. The land has a way of doing that. And there are pilgrimage dances too. Before a big journey, the people might gather in the plaza. They dance slowly, in circles, their feet mimicking the steps they'll take on the trail. They wear colors that match the earth: browns, whites, reds, blues. Their drums echo the rhythm of walking, and the spirits, they watch. They walk with them, Kashina's ancestors, even the corn maidens, all of them quietly stepping beside the people, dust rising with each sacred footfall. By now, the children know these paths by heart. They walk them with their grandparents, holding hands. They sing the songs. They place offerings at springs. They learn that even a simple trail, just dirt and stone, can be a temple if walked with care. They don't need smartphones. The earth is their map. And when they're old, they'll walk the same trails with their own grandchildren, maybe pausing in the same spot where they once tied their sandal too tight or asked for a story about the lake that breathes. By the end of this chapter, you can feel it in your bones. The Zuni people are not lost in this world. They are woven into it, like threads in a sacred blanket, moving across time, carried by memory, held by stone and sky. Their sacred places aren't locked behind walls. They're out in the open, in cliffs, in rivers, in the long hush between footsteps. And their paths, they're still there, still waiting, still walked. By those who remember. By those who listen. Chapter 9. Ceremonial Societies and the Rhythm of the Year. You've made it this far. Through the underworlds into the fifth world. You've met the corn maidens, walked with the Kashinas, and followed the dusty pilgrimage trails to sacred places. Now imagine settling into the heart of a village, maybe on a quiet afternoon, where children play softly near adobe walls, and you hear the distant thump of a drum echoing from a kiva, one of those round, sunken rooms where something old is always stirring. That sound, it's not just music, it's time. Not clock time, not calendars, but sacred, circular time. The way the Zuni people live the year, not just mark it. And at the center of that rhythm are the ceremonial societies, spiritual communities within the community, each holding a different piece of the puzzle, each helping keep the people balanced with the land, the sky, and the spirit world. So let's get to it. What, exactly, are ceremonial societies? Think of them like spiritual guilds, but way more meaningful than any club or team. These aren't hobby groups, they're sacred lineages. Each society has its own songs, dances, prayers, duties, and knowledge, passed down carefully through generations. Some focus on healing, some on weather, some on guiding children into adulthood, some on preparing offerings or leading major festivals. You're not born into a society just because your parents were in it. Sometimes the spirits choose you. Sometimes the elders see something in your dreams, or your behavior, or the way you listen to the wind. And once you're chosen well, it's a lifetime bond, not a job, a calling. The year in Zuni life is split into two halves, the Shalako season and the Kashina season. These aren't just weather patterns, they're deep cosmic cycles, woven into the way the world breathes. The Shalako season starts in winter. It's full of formality, long prayers, deep silence, and renewal. The Kashina season begins around the new year, when the dancers return to the village. It's more active. There's movement, dancing, public ceremony, spirit walking right in the plaza. Each season is filled with ceremonies, most of them led by specific societies. These ceremonies don't just entertain, they help keep the world balanced. They call the rain, they heal the sick, they keep the people aligned with the unseen world. Let's take a slow walk through a few of these societies. Not all of them. Some things are private, sacred, but enough to understand how deeply woven they are into Zuni life. First, you have the healing societies. These groups hold knowledge of herbs, prayers, and spirit work. When someone falls ill, not just physically, but spiritually, they're called. A healer might sing over a body for hours, might use special powders made from sacred earth, might call on Kashinas for guidance. Their role isn't to fix but to restore balance. Then there are rain societies. In the desert, rain isn't a maybe, it's a miracle. These societies perform ceremonies to ask for rain with humility. They dance in certain formations. They paint symbols of clouds and lightning on their arms. They know which songs the sky responds to. And when rain finally comes, you better believe people step outside, lift their hands, and whisper thanks to the dancers and the spirits alike. The bow priests are another society, guardians of the village. Not in a warrior sense, exactly, but more like keepers of cosmic order. They help protect against bad spiritual influences. They hold rituals during times of danger. They stand at the edge of ceremonies like a spiritual border patrol, making sure everything that enters the space is clean, clear, and safe. And then there are the clown societies. Yep, those black and white striped sacred clowns again. Except this time, we learn they're not just random jokers. They belong to a highly trained ceremonial group. Everything they do, from their jokes to their gestures, is part of a spiritual script. They mock greed, selfishness, bad behavior, but they do it in a way that makes people laugh and reflect at the same time. And nobody is above their jokes. Not even the village leaders. That's the point. The clown reminds everyone, stay humble, don't take yourself too seriously. Every society has a calendar of responsibilities, and so the year unfolds like a slow dance. In early spring, you hear the first drum beats as Kashina season opens. Summer brings pilgrimages, planting blessings, and rain prayers. Autumn is for harvesting, storytelling, gratitude. Winter, that's when Shalako returns. Ah, yes, Shalako. Let's pause here. The Shalako ceremony is one of the most sacred events in Zuni life. It happens in late fall, just before winter settles in. It's big, beautiful, cosmic. Giant masked figures, over 10 feet tall, represent the Shalakos, who are spirit messengers between the people and the sky gods. They arrive at sunset, moving in total silence, their footsteps slow, deliberate. People gather in near holy stillness. You don't talk during Shalako, you listen, you feel. Each step they take is like a year being set into place. They bring messages, they measure the harmony of the village, they prepare the world for the next round of seasons. And behind all this, the ceremonial societies, training dancers, preparing food, making prayers, keeping the sacred engine running smoothly. What's beautiful is that these societies aren't about power, they're about service. No one joins to be important. You join because you're called, because the spirits whispered, because the elders saw a spark. And once you're in, you spend your life learning how to move, how to chant, how to offer, how to listen. And what do the people get in return? Balance, rain, healing, story, order, joy. A year that moves like a circle, not a race. By the time a child is old enough to watch a dance from their father's shoulders, they've already seen dozens of ceremonies. They've tasted sacred food. They've helped their mother gather herbs. They've sat in the kiva during winter stories and felt the world swirl with old memory. And when that child grows older, one day quietly, humbly, someone might tap their shoulder and say, "It's time. The society has seen you." And just like that, the circle keeps going. So now, if you ever hear a drum beat softly in the distance, or see a person walking carefully with cornmeal in hand, you'll know it's not just tradition, it's time being kept, it's balance being made, it's spirit walking in rhythm with the sun, the stars, the ancestors, and the soft hush of the earth. And it's all carried in the hands and hearts of the ceremonial societies who help the people live not just in the world, but with it. Chapter 10. The Role of Storytelling and Winter Nights. Imagine this. Outside, the desert wind hums low. The stars are bright, poking through the cold black sky like tiny songs. Inside a round adobe room, a fire crackles. The light dances on the walls. Grandparents, children, cousins, everyone is sitting close together. Some are leaning against thick pillows. A bowl of roasted corn sits in the center, half forgotten. The only sound is the fire, until someone clears their throat and says, "Let me tell you how Spider-Woman taught us to weave." And just like that, the whole room leans in. In the Zuni world, storytelling is not a hobby. It's not just something you do for fun when the chores are done or when you can sleep. It's a sacred responsibility, a way to pass on knowledge, history, instructions, warnings, humor, and prayers, all wrapped into words that feel as alive as any breath. But here's the catch. You can't tell sacred stories whenever you want. That's why they're mostly told in the winter, when the snakes are sleeping, the plants are resting, and the spirits of the land are quieter and listening with softer ears. Winter is the time when stories can move freely without disturbing the world's delicate balance. So when the first frost settles on the ground and the ceremonial dancers pause for a season, the storytellers rise, usually the elders, sometimes a father or auntie, sometimes a person who's not the loudest in the village, but whose words somehow always make you sit still. The fire is lit, children rub their eyes, blankets are pulled tighter, and then come the stories softly spoken, but sharp as obsidian, deep as the canyon, funny, sad, strange, wise. Some are origin stories like how the sun first learned to rise, or how the world became balanced after so much tumbling through the darkness. Some are about spirits and animals, how Coyote tricked himself into trouble, or why Rabbit always watches the moon. Some are just about people, ones who got too greedy, too proud, or too forgetful, and what happened next. These stories aren't just lessons, they're living maps. Think of them like whispered directions. Here's how to be human. Here's how not to forget the sacred. Here's what happens when you stop listening to the wind. And the best part, the stories don't always explain themselves. Sometimes the storyteller finishes and just sips some water. No moral, no summary, no "so what did we learn?" speech. They leave the story hanging in the air like incense. You breathe it in, you carry it, you think about it, and later, maybe days later, you suddenly get it. The Zuni believe that stories know when they want to be told. Some stories wait for the right child to grow up. Some wait for the right season. Some never get told twice the same way. That's part of their magic. They're not written down in books. They're carried in memory, shaped by breath, colored by voice. And because of that, listening is an art form too. You don't just sit back and tune out. You lean in. You hold still. You become part of the story. Because the spirits in the story, they might be watching. One of the most famous story figures is Coyote. He's not just a clever animal. He's the ultimate trickster, sometimes wise, sometimes foolish. Sometimes he saves the day, sometimes he ruins it completely. In one story, he tries to steal fire from the fire people, but ends up burning his own tail off. In another, he pretends to be a Kashina, just to get extra food at a feast, but forgets to take off the mask and scares himself in a mirror. Kids love Coyote stories. They're hilarious, but everyone has a lesson hiding under the laughter. And then there's Spider-Woman, grandmother spirit, patient and wise. She teaches people how to weave, not just with threads, but with life. She reminds people to be slow, to pay attention, to pull things together carefully. She's in many Zuni stories, often appearing just when someone is most lost. And there are darker stories, too. Stories about what happens when the earth is disrespected, when sacred places are ignored, when a person thinks they're more important than the wind, the rain, or the corn. These stories might involve mysterious creatures, long journeys, or spirits who speak in riddles. Children don't always understand every detail, but that's the point. Stories grow as you grow. What confuses a 7-year-old might become crystal clear at 17 or 70. And what about the storytellers themselves? They're not always loud or flashy. Some are soft-spoken. Some pause for long moments that make you think they forgot where they were. But then they drop a line so sharp it makes the whole room go quiet. A good storyteller doesn't just talk, they perform. Their eyes widen at the scary parts. Their voices rise with excitement. They whisper when it gets mysterious. They laugh at their own jokes. They use their hands, their breath, even their silence, as part of the tale. And the best ones, they never rush. Because good stories need time to breathe. And here's something beautiful. Storytelling is for everyone. Elders tell stories, yes, but children tell stories too. About their dreams, about a cloud they saw that looked like a kashina, about how their corn plant spoke to them in the garden. And the adults listen, because in Zuni life, everyone holds a piece of the sacred, no matter how small. Even a child's made-up tale might hold a kernel of truth, might be a whisper from a spirit, might be the beginning of a story that'll be told for generations. So now picture this again. The fire is lower. Someone's finished a long tale about how the corn maiden once danced with the thunderclouds. Everyone's quiet. A few kids are already asleep. An elder throws another piece of pin and wood on the fire. Sparks jump. The storyteller looks around and says, "Well, I guess that's enough for tonight." And the story floats there. Not done, just ... resting. Because the next chapter, that lives in the people, in how they act, in what they remember, in how they speak to the land tomorrow. And that, right there, is the sacred rhythm of Zuni winter nights. Not just stories, but the soul of the people, spoken out loud. Chapter 11. The Sacred Direction System and Cosmology. So far, we've journeyed through emergence stories, spirit dances, sacred places, and firelit tales. But now, we look up, or maybe we look in, because the Zuni way of seeing the universe isn't about straight lines, or cold galaxies, about balance, color, movement, and place. The world isn't just a big rock spinning in space, it's a living pattern, and we are lucky to be placed right inside it. Let's talk about the 6 sacred directions. To Zuni people, these directions are more than where the wind blows, or how to get home. They are spiritual anchors, each with its own color, animal, feeling, and purpose. Together, they shape how ceremonies begin, how homes are built, how prayers are offered, and how the world is understood. The directions aren't just out there, they're inside every person, too. Here they are, the 6 sacred directions. North, color, yellow, represents winter, clarity, breath, and wisdom. South, color, red, the place of summer, warmth, growth, and strength. West, color blue, the land of rain, reflection, and endings. East, color, white, the place of dawn, beginnings, and guidance. Above, color, multicolor, rainbow, or sometimes all colors. Sky beings, stars, and spirit watchers. Below, color, black, earth, roots, ancestors, deep memory. And then, of course, there's the center, the place where all directions meet. That's where we stand, where the people live. It's not considered just a spot, it's the heart of the world. Each direction isn't just somewhere else, it's someone, in a way. Elders say you can greet the directions like family. Before a ceremony, you might turn to the north and say a soft prayer, thanking it for winter's lessons. Then to the south, for strength and fruit. Then west, for water and dreams. Then east, for light and renewal. Then you look up to the sky and down to the soil. You've just greeted your cosmic family. Children are taught early on to respect these directions, not out of fear, but out of recognition. The directions hold the land together, and they help hold you together, too. Now, if this seems abstract, imagine it like a spiritual compass. Wherever you go, these directions are with you. If you're feeling lost, the Zuni way says, turn to the east, face the rising sun, start again. If you're full of anger, maybe turn to the north, breathe, cool down, let wisdom speak. The directions are not just concepts, they're part of how life flows. Even during dances or ceremonies, the movements often follow the sacred order of these directions. It's not just choreography, it's a cosmic map in motion. And remember, the key for those round, sunken rooms where ceremonies happen, even those are built with the direction system in mind. Most have a small opening in the ceiling pointing upward toward above, and often a symbolic opening in the floor, representing below the world the people once climbed from. When a person enters the kiva, they symbolically move between worlds, held in the center of the directions. Time itself moves in a circular way for the Zuni, not linear. Seasons don't end, they come back around. Life doesn't move forward, it moves through. And this is mirrored in how they greet the day, the stars, and the land, always turning, always circling, always aligning. And now let's float up into the sky. To the Zuni, the sky is not just pretty, it's alive. It holds spirits, it listens, it tells stories through stars and clouds. The sun isn't just a ball of fire, it's Father Sun, a being who gives light, warmth, and time. The moon, Mother Moon, gentle, mysterious, keeper of tides and women's rhythms. And then there are the constellations, not the Greek myths you might know, but Zuni sky patterns. The Zuni have their own sky stories. Different stars rise and fall during certain ceremonies. The Milky Way is sometimes seen as a spiritual trail, the path that souls follow after death, back to the ancestors. During long pilgrimages, some walkers navigate not just by stars, but by the memory of star stories told by grandparents under blankets, when the fire was low and the winter was deep. And it doesn't stop there. The Zuni calendar, yes, they have one ease based on the movement of the sun and moon. Certain ceremonies only happen when the moon is just right. Some prayers are timed with the solstice or equinox. And there are people, timekeepers you might say, who carefully track when the first corn shoot breaks the ground, or when Venus rises just before dawn. These are not random dates, they are cosmic appointments. Miss them, and the whole rhythm feels off. So when a child learns to walk, they are also learning where north is. When someone prays, they're aligning with the above and below. When a dancer moves counterclockwise in a ceremony, it's not style, it's alignment. The whole world becomes a kind of sacred geometry. And you, little human, you're placed right in the middle. Not lost, not alone, not separate. Just exactly where you're meant to be. But here's the most beautiful part. Even though these directions are sacred, they're also deeply practical. The Zuni people don't lock them away in temples, they live them. When a person gets overwhelmed, they might step outside, face a direction, and just stand there. Breathe, recenter. A young man might carry a small charm that represents the east to remind him to stay humble and clear-headed. An elder might place black stones in her garden's corners, not just for tradition, but to invite harmony from all sides. The cosmos isn't some distant thing. It's here, in the dirt, the drumbeat, the doorway, the sunrise. So next time you feel pulled in all directions, remember this. The Zuni don't see directions as things that divide. They see them as forces that hold everything together. 6 points, one center, a circle that never breaks. And in that circle, you can walk, you can dance, you can rest, you can pray, you can find your place again, just like the ancestors did, just like the children will. Chapter 12. Wampum Belts. Memory woven in beads. Let's slow things down even more. Picture a quiet room. Maybe it's evening. A grandmother sits by a low fire, carefully pulling a string through her fingers. On the string are beads, purple and white, tiny and perfect. Each one has its place. Each one carries a thought, a lesson, a memory. This isn't jewelry, it's history, it's lore, it's a wampum belt. Now, wampum beads themselves aren't originally Zuni, they come from nations further east, like the Haudenosaunee, Iroquois, Lenape, and Wampanoag. But the idea that stories and truths can be carried in things you wear, hold, and make with kerikos all across native cultures. And in this chapter, we'll gently explore how these beaded belts became some of the most important documents in North American history. First, let's meet the beads. Wampum comes from a word in Eastern Algonquian languages, meaning white shell beads. They're usually made from quahog clam shells, those deep purple and white shells you find along the Atlantic coast. Making a single bead took time. A lot of it. You had to cut the shell, smooth it, shape it, drill a tiny hole with stone tools. No power drills, no shortcuts. So when someone gave you a wampum bead, that wasn't just decoration. It was a gift of time, of skill, of intention. Now imagine not just one bead but hundreds, maybe thousands strung together into long bands, woven into patterns, symbols, images, messages. That's a wampum belt. These belts were used in a way that might surprise people today, not just to mark important moments but to remember them. Because in a world without notebooks or hard drives or legal pads, how do you carry a treaty, or a law, or a sacred agreement? You weave it. Each pattern on the belt stood for something. A circle might mean unity. 2 rows of purple running side by side might represent 2 nations walking together in peace. A symbol of a tree might be the tree of peace itself. And the belt wasn't just handed over and forgotten. It had to be spoken aloud, in ceremony, with witnesses. The words were recited, and the belt became a physical, beautiful, permanent record of that memory. Think of it like this: the beads carried the words, even when the people who spoke them were gone. Among the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois Confederacy wampum belts were central to how their entire league worked. And guess what? That includes the great law of peace, a constitution older than the US Constitution. They didn't write it on paper. They wove it into belts. They remembered it in speeches. They passed it down through generations of faith keepers and speakers who had memorized every part. One of the most famous is the Hiawatha belt, a long band of purple and white that shows 5 connected symbols, representing the 5 original nations of the Confederacy: Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca. At the center, a great tree, the tree of peace. Its roots stretch in 4 directions. Beneath it, the people found safety and unity. That belt still exists. You can see it in museums today. But more importantly, it still means something. It's not a dead artifact. It's a living agreement. The belts also had power in diplomacy. When 2 nations made a treaty, they exchanged belts, not just as a symbol, but as a binding memory. If one side broke the treaty, the other could come back with a belt in hand and say, "We remember. This was your promise." Some belts marked peace. Others were for condolence use when someone died, to help carry the grief. Some were used to welcome strangers, to open paths of friendship. Each time, the beads were part of the message. It didn't speak without them. He didn't forget what was said. Now, you might wonder, how could people remember what each belt meant? Well, the belts were paired with oral tradition. They weren't meant to speak on their own, like a letter. They were part of a system where memory lived in the people, and the belt helped hold that memory in place. Think of it like this: the speaker held the belt, and as they spoke, they moved their fingers along the beads. The pattern triggered the phrases. The phrases triggered the stories. The stories reminded everyone of their role. It was a kind of spiritual public speaking, with a prop that held the universe. And here's something amazing. When early colonists came from Europe, many of whom couldn't speak a single word of the native languages, they still accepted these belts. Why? Because they understood what they represented: law, promise, diplomacy. They recognized the gravity. Even if they didn't always honor the agreement later, in the moment, they knew, this is a treaty. This is serious. Some of the earliest US officials received wampum belts as gifts, signs of alliance or requests. Some even admired the belt system and saw in it a form of government deeper than their own. And yes, some historians now believe that the US Constitution was partly inspired by the Iroquois Confederacy's great law of peace, which itself was remembered and passed down through wampum. The idea that separate states or nations could unite while still holding their identity. That leaders should be chosen for their wisdom. That laws should be remembered, not just written. All of that came long before 1776. And it came in beads. Now imagine a child watching their elder handle a belt, watching those careful fingers pass over each line, hearing the story told once again, feeling the silence after. Maybe someday, that child will speak the same story, hold the same beads, add one more voice to a chain of memory hundreds of years long. In that way, wampum belts aren't history, they're continuity. Even today, some native communities still use wampum in ceremonial exchanges. Some belts have been lost or stolen, sitting in private collections, or forgotten in dusty boxes. But others have come home, returned to their people. And when they are brought out and held in a circle again, when someone speaks the old words, the memory returns. Not just a belt, but a world. So next time you see a string of beads, pause, wonder what they might be holding, wonder who made them, wonder what was spoken when they were first tied together. And remember, truth doesn't always live in books. Sometimes it lives in color, in pattern, in things made slowly, by hand, with love. Sometimes it lives in beads. Chapter 13. Diplomacy with the newcomers. Let's go back again, to the sound of the wind across dry earth. The cornfields are swaying, the river is whispering, and everything is moving like it always has. Then, off in the distance, a different kind of sound. Hooves, footsteps, foreign voices. The Zuni people, who have lived in harmony with the land for generations, look up and see something they've never seen before. Strangers. At first, it might have been curiosity, a tilt of the head, a narrowing of the eyes. These men wore shiny armor, rode horses, and carried flags from across a giant ocean. And they didn't come quietly. Some came with demands, others with crosses, some with open hands, others with sharp ones. But here's the thing, the Zuni didn't panic. They didn't run. They did what they had always done in the face of mystery. They listened, they observed, and then they responded with diplomacy. The first recorded contact between the Zuni and Europeans happened in the early 1500s, with the arrival of Spanish explorers. One of the most infamous was Francisco de Coronado, who came searching for something out of a legend, the 7 Cities of Gold. Spoiler alert, he didn't find them. What he found instead were the Zuni Pueblos, intricately built communities with adobe walls, shining in the sun like golden stone. Coronado's men were disappointed. No gold, no treasure, just people who didn't speak their language, didn't follow their god, and didn't kneel. So what did they do? They attacked. The first encounter turned violent. The Zuni at Hoiku, one of their oldest villages, defended their home. Arrows flew, stones were thrown, lives were lost. And yet, in the aftermath, when things cooled down and the dust settled, the Zuni didn't hold on to hate. They didn't vanish into the hills. They stayed. They rebuilt. And more importantly, they tried to understand the strangers who had come from the sea. Over time, diplomacy became necessary. The Spanish returned again and again, not always with swords, sometimes with priests, men in black robes who spoke softly, carried crosses, and said they came with love. To the Zuni, this was strange. They had their own gods, their own stories, their own way of connecting with spirit. But instead of rejecting the newcomers outright, they did something else. They adapted, carefully, strategically. They allowed missions to be built. They listened to the sermons. They even learned bits of Spanish and Latin, but in private. In the safety of kivas and sacred places, they kept speaking to their own gods, kept dancing their own ceremonies, kept telling their own stories. This was diplomacy at its finest. Not just words, but survival through balance. And the diplomacy wasn't just about religion. It was also about trade. The newcomers brought things the Zuni had never seen before. Metal tools, wool blankets, glass beads, horses. Some of it was useful, some of it wasn't. But the Zuni, already skilled traders with long-established routes, stretching west to the Pacific and south into Mexico, knew how to evaluate value. They didn't just accept gifts, they bargained. In turn, they offered pottery, turquoise, food, and knowledge of the land. They taught the Spanish about water sources, about trails, about how to survive in the high desert. The Zuni were never passive receivers. They were active diplomats, always aware of what was being exchanged and what wasn't. But diplomacy also meant enduring pressure. The Spanish wanted more than trade. They wanted conversion. They wanted obedience. Sometimes they demanded Zuni children attend mission schools. Sometimes they tried to ban ceremonies, destroy sacred items, forbid dances. And this is where Zuni diplomacy showed its quiet strength. Instead of open rebellion, though that did happen at times, they often chose subtle resistance. A kiva entrance hidden behind a house. A dance moved to midnight. A story told in code. The people adjusted. They endured. They bent, but they didn't break. Of course, diplomacy has its limits. In 1680, the Zuni joined one of the largest indigenous uprisings in American history, the Pueblo Revolt. Across the southwest, Pueblo peoples rose up against the Spanish, driving them out of the region for over a decade. The Zuni were part of this. They had reached their limit. Enough was enough. But even after the revolt, when the Spanish returned, the Zuni negotiated again. They didn't fall into endless war. They knew that long-term survival required long-term vision, and that meant finding ways to coexist without surrendering identity. As centuries passed, other newcomers arrived. Not just Spaniards now, but Mexicans, Americans, surveyors, anthropologists, and soldiers. Each wave came with different tools and different maps, but always with the same underlying goal: control. And each time the Zuni responded, not just with resistance, but with intelligent diplomacy. They petitioned, they negotiated land rights, they worked with lawyers, they spoke at hearings, they adapted again and again, but always, quietly, they held on to the core of who they were. Even in recent times, Zuni diplomacy continues. They've been involved in repatriation efforts, bringing sacred objects back from museums. They've worked with national parks and government agencies to protect sacred sites. They've developed education programs that teach both Zuni language and Western subjects. And they've stood firm on water rights, knowing that their survival still depends on the land and its sacred flow. And all of this, every treaty, every handshake, every careful decision, is part of a centuries-long practice of diplomacy, rooted not in politics, but in spiritual endurance. Here's something powerful. For the Zuni, diplomacy isn't about being weak or avoiding conflict. It's about maintaining harmony in a world that often doesn't offer it. It's about looking a stranger in the eye and saying, "I will meet you, but I will not forget who I am." That takes courage. That takes wisdom. That takes ancestors whispering behind your shoulder and grandchildren watching from your lap. So now, if you ever stand in Zuni land and hear two languages being spoken, or see a mission beside a kiva, or walk past a government building that faces the sacred mountain, you'll know that's not confusion, that's diplomacy. That's centuries of negotiation written in footsteps, in beads, in dances held in the heart, and through it all, the people remained. Still Zuni, still here, still listening. Chapter 14. The arrival of anthropologists and cultural preservation. So the centuries kept rolling. The Spanish had come and gone. The American flag was flying now. Railroads stretched across the land. Soldiers wore khaki instead of armor. Schools were built, missions expanded, and then another kind of newcomer appeared. This one didn't speak like a soldier or a priest. They didn't demand land or try to teach the Bible. No, these folks came with questions, lots of them, and clipboards, and measuring tape, and sometimes a camera the size of a small dog. They called themselves anthropologists. To the Zuni, this was strange. These were people who didn't want to rule, or trade, or even necessarily convert. They wanted to study, to document Zuni culture, to write down what people did, said, believed, wore, cooked, built, and danced. Some arrived saying things like, "We want to preserve your vanishing way of life," which, if you think about it, is a bit rude. Like walking into someone's home and saying, "You look like you're about to go extinct. Can I write a book about you before that happens?" And yet the Zuni people responded not with anger, but with thoughtful caution, because even though these outsiders were more polite, they still had the power to take power, and the Zuni had learned over many generations how to observe observers. One of the earliest and most famous was Frank Hamilton Cushing, a young Smithsonian researcher who arrived in the late 1800s. Cushing did something unusual. He didn't just visit, he moved in. He lived among the Zuni for years, learning the language, eating the food, attending ceremonies as much as they allowed, and eventually being adopted by a Zuni family. He even became a member of a ceremonial society, a rare honor for an outsider. To some, he was a friend. To others, he crossed lines. He collected sacred items. He took stories not meant for public sharing. He sent Zuni artifacts back east to museums, universities, private collections. And here's where things get complicated. Because Cushing loved Zuni culture. He believed it was beautiful, wise, worth preserving. But in his excitement, he didn't always ask if he should preserve it the way he did, by taking pieces away. This was the beginning of a long, tangled relationship between indigenous communities and the field of anthropology. Outsiders wanted to save cultures but often did so by removing things, masks, pottery, songs, bones, stories. They'd say, "This is important," and carry it off to a glass case in Boston or Berlin. Meanwhile, the Zuni were left saying, "Yes, it was important. That's why it shouldn't have been taken." Still, not every anthropologist was reckless. Some learned slowly to build real partnerships, to listen first, to ask, to sit in silence when a story wasn't theirs to write down. And over time, Zuni leaders became not just subjects of research, but custodians of their own preservation. They began to guide the narrative. They started saying, "If our culture is going to be documented, let us do the documenting." And just like that, the idea of cultural preservation began to shift. In the 20th century, more Zuni people went to college. Some studied anthropology themselves. Others became lawyers, artists, linguists, filmmakers, filmmakers. They returned home not to leave the past behind, but to help protect it. Zuni teachers began developing language programs. Young people learned not just English, but Zuni names for plants, stars, prayers, and kinship systems. Cultural centers were built not for tourists, but for the people themselves. A place where wampum belts could be displayed safely, where traditional songs could be recorded with permission, where elders could sit with youth and explain what the beadwork meant, how the drum rhythms matched the stars. And the Zuni started asking big questions. Should sacred stories be written down? Should anthropologists be allowed into kivas? Who owns a photograph of a ceremony? What happens when knowledge meant for the winter fire is published in a textbook? These weren't just academic questions. There were questions about control, about ownership of identity. And over time, the answers became clearer. Zuni people began to assert what had always been true, the right to define themselves. One powerful example is the Zuni Cultural Resource Advisory Team, ZCRAT. This group works to protect Zuni heritage from ancient ruins to family recipes. If a museum wants to display a sacred item, ZCRAT can step in and say, that item is not meant for public eyes, it belongs home. If an archaeologist wants to dig on Zuni land, ZCRAT asks, why? Who benefits? What spirits lie beneath the soil? This isn't about hiding the past, it's about protecting the present. Because for the Zuni, culture isn't a fossil. It's not a thing trapped in amber. It's alive. Even more recently, Zuni filmmakers have begun telling their own stories through documentaries and YouTube videos. Zuni artists blend traditional styles with modern expression. Zuni youth organize digital archives to keep language and songs alive for generations raised on screens. And if you walk into some of today's anthropology departments, you'll find native scholars leading the research, asking new questions, telling deeper stories. The lens has flipped. The subject now holds the camera. So what did the Zuni learn from over a century of being studied? Maybe this, that there's a difference between being observed and being seen. Being studied is having someone write notes while you speak. Being seen is having someone ask, do you want to speak? And how can I listen better? And the best part, the Zuni didn't just wait for better questions. They started asking their own, and answering them in their own way. So now, if you ever walk into a museum and see a label under a Zuni pot that says, Origin Unknown, remember, there's a whole village out there that knows exactly who made it, what it was for, and what song was sung while shaping the clay. And if you're lucky enough to hear that song someday, just listen. You're not hearing history. You're hearing life, speaking on its own terms. Chapter 15, Continuity and the Living Tradition. So here we are, at the last chapter. But the Zuni would probably smile and shake their heads at the idea of a last anything. For them, the world moves in circles. Time isn't a straight line. It loops. Stories don't finish. They rest. And people don't vanish. They become part of the pattern. So let's not think of this as the end. Let's think of it as a pause, right before the next breath. All through this journey, we've seen the Zuni people walk a path both ancient and modern, from sacred underworlds and emergence into the light, to contact with colonizers and the slow preservation of spirit. Through it all, one thing never changed. The Zuni never stopped being Zuni. Even when outsiders said, you must change, they replied, we already know how to adapt without forgetting who we are. Even when pieces of their culture were taken away, they found ways to remember, reclaim, and remake. And today, that tradition is still alive. Walk through Zuni Pueblo today, and you'll see something beautiful. A world where the ancient and the present walk side by side. You might hear kids laughing on a basketball court, then later hear those same kids singing old ceremonial songs with their grandparents. You might see a teenager on their phone, texting, with corn pollen tucked behind their ear, because they just helped with a blessing that morning. You might visit a gallery where the pottery looks just like the work of an ancestor from 700 years ago, but with a little modern twist, a new color, a new shape, a signature on the bottom that says, still here. Because the Zuni have never been frozen in time. They've been moving, breathing, growing with their roots deep and strong. Many Zuni people today work in schools, in healthcare, in government. Some are artists, musicians, computer techs, writers, and all of them carry, in some way, the teachings of the ancestors. Language programs are alive and growing. Cultural festivals are held not for outsiders, but for the people themselves to teach, to remember, to feel. Ceremonies still take place with the same reverence, even as the world buzzes outside with traffic and emails and TikTok. You see, Tradition isn't about rejecting the new, it's about making sure the old isn't left behind. And that's what the Zuni do, day after day with quiet strength. But the challenges haven't gone away. There are still pressures, economic ones, environmental ones, spiritual ones. Sacred sites are still at risk from mining, tourism, or development. Youth still face questions about identity in a world that pulls them in many directions. But here's the thing, the answers have always been there. In the stories, in the dances, in the stars, in the directions. The Zuni don't have to invent new wisdom. They just keep listening to the old kind, passed down through thousands of years, still as clear as a bell on a cold desert morning. And this tradition isn't just about survival, it's about thriving. Zuni artists are watering their jewelry, pottery, and carvings don't just sell, they speak. Each one is a prayer, a history lesson, a wink from the ancestors. Zuni schools are integrating traditional knowledge with modern science, teaching astronomy not just as space, but as sky stories. Teaching health not just as medicine, but as harmony with the seasons and the body. Elders and youth are working side by side, building bridges across generations, making sure no one forgets, making sure everyone feels they belong. That's not nostalgia, that's continuity, and maybe that's the most sacred thing of all. Not a monument, not a museum, but a life still being lived, a language still being spoken, a dance still being danced beneath the stars. A people who remember where they came from, even as they walk toward what comes next. And what about the stories? Oh, they're still being told. Around fires, on porches, in classrooms, at bedtime. Not all of them are shared with outsiders. Some are meant to stay close, meant to unfold slowly, meant to be heard only in winter, only when the world is quiet. But they're still there, live and warm, waiting for the next ear, the next voice, the next moment when someone says, "Let me tell you something." So if you ever find yourself in Zuniland, walk gently, speak softly, listen with your full body, because beneath every rock, beside every cornstalk, behind every child's eyes, there is a story waiting to rise. And not just any story, a true one, because the Zuni people never disappeared. They're not relics, they're not preserved, they are present, walking the land of their ancestors, watching the stars that told their beginnings, speaking the names that were given before maps existed, and as long as they do, the story continues. So let's close our eyes now, take one long breath. Picture the underworld, the Sipapu, the first emergence into light. Picture the corn sprouting, the dancers circling, the fire glowing. Picture a belt of beads, a sacred direction, a child listening beside the flames, and hear the quiet voice that says, "This is not the end. This is how it always begins." Conclusion. And so, as our journey comes to a soft close, we find ourselves not at the end but back at the beginning. Like the Zuni themselves teach, everything moves in a circle. Time flows, stories echo, and the earth turns under our feet, just like it always has. From their sacred emergence into the light, through centuries of ceremony, challenge and change, the Zuni people have walked with quiet strength. They've listened to the land, danced for the rain, sung for the spirits. And when outsiders arrived with their flags, their crosses, and their questions, the Zuni answered with wisdom, not war, with patience, not silence. They didn't vanish, they adapted, they remembered, and they kept walking. Today, their children still speak the Zuni language, their elders still pray to the 6 sacred directions, their artists still shape clay with the same hands that have always known the shape of the earth. In a world that often forgets what it means to belong, the Zuni remind us, we come from somewhere, we are part of something bigger, and the stories we carry, no matter how old, are never just for remembering, they're for living. So wherever you are, tonight or tomorrow, maybe take a moment, step outside, feel the wind, look to the stars, offer a quiet thank you to the land beneath your feet, and remember the people who walked here long before maps, the people who still walk today, still singing, still planting, still dreaming, still Zuni, still home.